Larry Show.
Just to let you know, that's right.
Well, hello, Larry.
Tonight at Larry's, my man Baz catches up with none other than Mr. Sat Nav. So sit back, grab a drink as we chat car boot selling, positive community action, and running your life right.
This is the Larry Show.
Mr. Sat Nav, how you doing?
Yes.
Welcome to Larry's Bar.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just give us like a brief overview of who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, I suppose I'm an entrepreneur, firstly. I've been running my own business or businesses now for the last sort of 20 years. And I sort of go under the brand, as you introduced me, as Sat Nav. It's a coaching company, and what we do is we try to help and develop start-up businesses, or what I call underdogs, to give them the feeling that they can aspire to be entrepreneurs or better people in their workplace, you know, just a motivational tool using the hook of business to develop people.
So you've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years?
Yeah, I've been running my own business for 20 years now.
So what was you doing before that?
Before that, I was, I've been people who kind of were there in those days. I went to school, left school, went on from there and did a YTS program in an estate agent. Then I went on to work in a surveyor's company under the YTS scheme. Couldn't take the low pay. So I went off and worked in a bank for a couple of years. So
from there, would you say that was your jump off point to think, I want to do my own thing instead of working for
Yeah,
low
definitely.
pay?
I mean, when I left school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I suppose I was a little bit of a popular guy in those days, but you know, there was a lot of sort of stereotypes going around at that time, a lot of negativity going around from the streets that I came from. So the best angle at that time for me was to sort of jump on the youth training scheme. I didn't go to college because I knew what college would be. So I had a little, the early traits of being a visionary, and went down the YTS route to keep myself away from everything what was going on. And obviously learn something, you know, bit of an education and work in practice, understanding how the working world went.
Mate, what was the social background for you at that time? Like, what kind of, like, did you used to go dances? Did you used to go jams?
Early days, the early 80s, before I left school, that's when the sort of hip hop movement came about. So it was, you know, sort of practicing breaking, body popping moves in the estate, because we came from an estate, so we used to have the lift rooms, so we used to kind of spin on our backs and do all that sort of stuff. I think them times, probably were the sort of breakdance, Beat Street kind of era. So that was it. That was the original kind of first thing I suppose we kind of got into. But by the time we get into the 16, 17 years of age, in our area, things started to kind of change. So from the fun-loving kind of dance days, it kind of got a little bit more street-ish and, you know, hard. Instead of dancing, you'll stand up and screw the next man or whatever. That was the transition at that time. So, yeah. For us in East London, you've got to remember East London was a little bit different from other areas that kind of kept the movement alive. We, you know, I'd say about 13, 14, we used to go to a place called, I think you know it, Pastures Youth Centre. And we had a big jam there with Cookie Crew were down there, and Bombata turned up down there. So, but that was those days. That was, and if I get political, that's before they closed all the youth centres down. Because there was a stage when the youth centres closed down. And that, you know, and that's where we used to go to. Was it Richie Rich? I don't know if you're aware of him. A guy named Richie Rich. He used to do a lot of break dancing sessions and teach us how to dance and stuff like that. So that was that. But by the time we got to like that latter kind of teenage stage, I think it turned, as I said, from that kind of dance, fun-loving era into a more kind of rude boy era, where people were starting to look at the early stage of how they could make money through the poverty that we came from, or whatever. So I think that the transition from about 13, 14, 15, and then you got 16, 17, which is school leaver age, and then we were sort of like in clubs like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Shanolas and those kind of clubs.
Yeah, I used to
you know what I mean?
Shanolas.
So that was the pathway.
everyone started to think about making money. It's like, I mean, I'm coming from a South London point of view, but I'm sure it was the same across the board. Everyone used to do their little hustle here and there to make a few pounds and stuff. Do you know what I mean? But like, I think I want to find out a bit more about what made you choose to be an entrepreneur instead of going down the road of like some of your peers, let's just say.
Well, first things first, and it's a big point, and it's something that I try to put across to people today. I didn't even know what entrepreneur was.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what running a business was. So, and I don't think anybody at that time knew. So I think it's very important, if you kind of understand what things are, then that you can actually go towards them.
Yeah.
Or we just knew it was like we're poor, or parents don't really have much, whether it's single parent background, the estate. We just want money.
Yeah.
So I'm an entrepreneur. I started off with that. I come from a certain background. So you go down a certain road, you try certain things you don't try. But to answer your question, I just had a bigger picture. What I like to talk about when I do a workshop, if I do a motivational speak, vision.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't know that I had vision at that time, but I could just see past what everybody else was doing.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was about vision for me. Again, I'm an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is somebody who makes profit of a situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the hustles that you talk about, they were there.
Yeah.
You know, you sometimes kind of flip to the left, flip to the right, but you try to stay as focused as possible, which is really difficult, as you know, if everybody's doing something. So vision, and being happy to be yourself and not following the crowd. But nobody's perfect, so, you know, you bounce around. You know?
So that's something I wanted to really like get into. Like, you're at a young age and you have to kind of stay focused, as you just said, and motivated on like, yeah, I've got this goal, I want to do this. How do you maintain that at such a young age?
It is that vision, because when I talk about vision, you kind of look at something, you almost set goals for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't know you're actually doing it at the time, because all vision, goals, all these things are kind of modern day terms that people use, or terms that people would have been using in self-development classes or whatever.
Yeah.
But I can only say that it was vision for me that kind of held me constant and just kind of, as I said, kept me focused. And again, knowing that some of the end goals of some of this other stuff was prison,
Yeah.
you know, mental health, which you didn't really understand. You just knew there was a madman on every estate,
Yeah.
and you used to hear the story that he used to be a top shot, he used to be this, he used to be that, now he's mad. So these things were kind of things that you looked at and said, no, that's not what I want in my life. As I said, with the you know, we had role models, but you always kind of look to America for those models, Cosby Show or other productions. So you knew there was more.
So at that time, as you're saying, there's all different types of role models, and it's usually American and blah blah blah. Who at that time was your role model? Difficult to say, because I don't. As I said, I can only remember having, you know, looking at the TV. I had the chance to go to America when I was 11 years old. Right.
So I was able to see some different visions and different viewpoints. So maybe that stuck with me as well.
Yeah.
You know. But in my immediate area, most of the role models were guys that looked good.
Yeah.
Gold teeth, chapsies, you know, well dressed, not seemingly at work in the daytime. So as you get older, you realise that a lot of these guys are, are hustling or doing their thing.
It was something else that I really wanted to know. It was like, for you to enter into that world of like business, you had to start selling something. What was the first thing that you sold?
To take it right back and to tie it into where we are today, and big up Larry and things. When I was about 13, you remember the thick laces?
Yeah.
So there was a shop, like haberdashery kind of pick and mix shop near our school.
Yeah.
And I found these laces. They weren't thick laces, but they were thicker. than the average lace.
Yeah.
So I used to iron them, put them in my trainer, cross them over.
Yeah.
People liked them. So I used to take money off of some of the guys in the school and say, yeah, I can get these or whatever. At lunchtime, sprint all the way down the road to that place, buy up the laces, go back and make a profit. So if I really think about it, in the earliest days, that would be the first thing I sold.
So what kind of age was you then?
That was about 13, as I said, in that kind, yeah.
Wow,
yeah, because I
man.
remember being in, them days you had secondary school and senior
Yeah.
school. I was definitely in secondary school, so that'd be about 13, 14.
Mate, that's dope.
So again, going back, at the time I just thought I was just doing whatever I was doing. But when I think about it, when I, kind of go back in my mind, I was buying them for, say, 5p and selling for 10p or whatever the number was.
100% profit.
Making money. Making money.
Brilliant. Used to sell fat laces in school.
Mm.
Right, that's a cool hustle actually. 5p to 10p. Do you remember the first actual official business that you launched?
Yeah, and again, it wasn't official at the time.
Okay.
And this is, again, I think this is important. Sometimes we try to be too official, follow too many rules, regulations, and so you concentrate too much on your accounts, your marketing, your PR, all of this stuff. But really sometimes, to take the phrase of Nike, sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah.
So fast forward to about 18, 19, 20, say, after sort of working and doing a YTS and whatever, working in the bank, there used to be still there now, there's a kind of wholesale area in Whitechapel, Commercial Road.
Right, yeah.
And I always used to see these stores, that like shops or whatever, that said wholesale on them. I didn't actually know what it meant.
Yeah.
So one time I went in there and I said, oh, excuse me, mate, what's this wholesale, whatever? And they said, obviously, you've got to buy more than one, whatever. So I remember identifying a product that people were selling. That was a little bit before people were in branded stuff.
Yeah.
And example, they said that if you buy 10 of these, you can buy them for £10 each.
Yeah.
But I know that I'd seen them on the markets or whatever for 20, 25. So me and my mate put in £50 each and bought up a load of these things, started to go around in our cars and pop the boot on people.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'd say was my first official business. Still didn't know I was an entrepreneur, still didn't know I was a businessman, because where you come from is just a hustle.
Yeah, yeah.
And your market, which I'll call market in this time, was the people from the ends.
Yeah.
Or anybody on the road that you could see that would, buy these type of things.
Yeah.
So we used to just roll up on, man, like, boom, how you doing? Which they would call a sales pitch now. But really, we were just doing our thing. We were just hustling. And I started selling them and, selling out in a day, going back, re-upping and keep flipping the stock. In all fairness, I think that I took the strategy, big words again, from the street hustle, because I know that people who sell drugs or whatever they're doing, so you sell, re-up, sell again, and I took that ideology, and I put it into selling clothes, because I knew the people on the street were very up on their clothes and really wanted clothes. So that was the first business that I kind of went into, selling, obviously solving a problem at a profit, and that's what they call an entrepreneur today.
Brilliant. So that's your first unofficial business that you started doing. How many businesses can you say you've got at the moment?
Well, since selling clothes, I went into, if I say that I started there, then I went in doing a bit of market trading. Then I used to buy a lot of stuff from America,
right,
tying it back in to where we are today. And I used to sell a lot of Rockaware, Jay-Z's brand, Fubu, Academics, and that sort of stuff. So I used to be in New York every kind of 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
That was a great part of my life where, that's when I was like turning good money and so the transition went from there. To answer your question, I made money from there, reinvested it in property.
Okay.
And then I established like my first sort of property business.
Yeah.
I still sell clothes, but more in a print form. So that's another company, I suppose. I print garments for people, for clubs, charities, people who have got early fashion brands or whatever.
You were saying earlier about like workshops and stuff. Can you just tell me a little bit like how you'd put a workshop together? What kind of age group you would focus it at?
Well, in the middle of all of that, what I told you earlier, I went back to education,
right,
and I studied psychology as my first degree. And then I went on from that, and the experience I've obviously obtained from business and owning my first limited company or whatever, I went on and done my master's.
Right.
So it's a whole kind of package. That's what brings me up to modern day. So I got the academic knowledge and also sort of the practical business knowledge.
Yeah, you've got the experience.
And that's, so it's culmination of all of those different experiences is what Sat Nav coaching is today. And really the part that is dear to me is that obviously I come from a certain background, and I realise that a lot of people hustle, but sometimes struggle with the concept of kind of scaling their business because of the lack of kind of knowledge and information. So, Sat Nav coaching has kind of created videos for people who have not learnt to invest in themselves or can't afford to invest in themselves, so they can get some kind of free tidbits on what they can do. And then the workshops I've done some workshops with young people under a community banner.
Right.
And then I also work with individuals who have established businesses and they just need one-to-one coaching just to kind of keep them motivated and inspire them. A coach doesn't actually tell you what to do or how to run your business, but they're just a kind of supportive arm.
I know you've got your fingers in like quite a few pies and stuff, like business and property. Is there like other projects that you are involved in that's kind of outside of business and property?
Yeah, well, I at the moment I chair an organisation called the ABWP.
Okay.
Familiar with that?
What does that stand for?
It's a Better Way Partnership.
Brilliant.
Based in East London, and what we kind of do is, or what we look to do is kind of support young people or discuss with the local authority and the police about their practices on how they deal with young people and how they deal with people who they say are gang related. We try to kind of give a community perspective and sort of work as a kind of buffer between the community and these authorities. Because what you tend to find is the authorities have got this mindset, thinking this way, and the community's got another way of thinking. So we sit in the middle to try to kind of create a communication hub.
A lot of people say nowadays, like, I'm a boss, innit? I'm a boss, I mean? Like, give me your definition compared to the road definition of boss.
Some people who are on the road, as you say, are obviously bosses because they employ people, they set up production line, they set up marketing, so they do a lot of the time utilise a lot of the skills that any business person uses. So for some people, they are bosses,
right? Because
a boss, as I said, that you've found a problem and you're solving it at a profit.
Okay.
Where it gets a little bit sticky is the risk. All businesses have a risk, but street businesses, risk is really quite high. And if you assess the risk before going into it, you may look at being a boss in something else.
Yeah.
And then you've got what they call the rhetoric of being a boss. And that's just people just going around, anything's a boss, because you like sell a £10 drawer or whatever, if they still use that terminology, you're a boss. Or because you hear Rick Ross come out or any of these artists come out with these tunes that have boss related to them. I just think people have to look at and be serious about what a boss is. It's a good life. It has its negativities. I don't know if you listened to the Dame Dash interview. He really kind of hit out about this kind of word boss and people mimicking that they're being a boss. Now, I think not to quote him, but if you're saying you're a boss, you actually have to look at somebody else who tells you what to do. You're not a boss.
Right.
And that was one of his big pointers. So for me, it doesn't matter like at what level that you're at. If you're selling a product or a service, even if it's at the smallest level, that's fine. But I think people have taken this word boss as a fashion statement.
Right.
Yeah. And just trying to, boost up themselves by saying I'm a boss.
Yeah.
But actually, as long as you can explain, break down why you're a boss. One of my videos says, have you got a business plan now? And it doesn't mean you have to have a 10-page, 20-page business plan, but you have to have a plan. Not just be able to sell a couple bits here and there and then say, yeah, I'm a boss. And that's really that whole American culture and the modern day hip hop has kind of, put that on people, and people are just running with it. But in the end of the day, a boss is something that you have, it's a character. It's like, I think it's a mindset. Being a boss is a mindset. It's not just because I sell a few things around the corner. I have a lot of people come to me and, yeah, I'm going to be your partner, or I want to go into business with you. And, you start to get a little bit prudish because you're going to say, well, what experience do you have?
Yeah.
You're almost going to ask them for a CV.
Yeah.
And if a man says, yeah, I sold a couple of bricks and whatever, then no, sorry, I'm not into that sort of thing. So, it's I think the message I want to say to like young men or even older men these days, like being a boss isn't just a fashion statement. It's a lifestyle. It's a mindset.
So how would you try and resolve that if you was mentoring somebody?
I'd say the same thing to a young person I say to an old person. Look at life like you're alive.
Okay.
We get so used to kind of going to work, doing what we were like, hating the boss, and we get into that mindset.
Right.
Instead of saying, well, hold on a minute, every single place I go to, sell me something. Everywhere you go, sell you something. So somebody's selling you and you're a consumer. So you're buying something, so you're buying into somebody's business.
Right.
What product or service can you have that you can offer the world that solves a problem at a profit? And just stick to that way of thinking. I'm annoying when I go out with my wife or the family. I'll look at things and I'll be like, I'll look at the price, especially in fashion because we didn't touch it, but a long period of my business was in fashion. Okay. So I would look at a product, turn the label, see where it was made, what it's made up of, and say, well, it's £100, but I know that probably costs £9 to be made.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I see people rushing into, oh no, I need that because of this, that, and all that's happened is marketing has worked on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're buying in. You're buying in for self-esteem. You're buying in to say you're this person. But in the end of the day, think about what can you sell to the world.
Yeah.
The world's going to sell to you, but what can you sell to the world? That's what you've got to think about. It's sell, really. Yeah. Business is sell. These guys, they're doing whatever, but they like fashion. They like clothes. It's important to them. Well, let me sell them something that they can look good because that's what they're believing. That's what they're about. They all want to look good. So let me be the one who takes their money to look good. But that was before the internet had come along and before the mall kind of culture. Yeah. So it was sort of quite independent shops. And it was easier to kind of approach people at that time and just sell them things out there. But it was more accepted. Whereas now, it's internet. But this is where I do get onto the young people. You've got more opportunity now. Right. There's the internet has opened you up to the world. There's you don't know, you can't no longer talk about the hood and people are holding me back and because I'm this and because I'm that. That is not valid anymore. Yeah. Because you can get out online and get all around the world. When I was coming up, maybe I could have, it's because I'm that colour or because I'm that, but that still wasn't right at that time. Yeah. Because I and you and anybody else, they allow that to hold them back. That belief is holding you. You break that belief and you can move past that. So you can actually take your mind and set it. Yeah. Sometimes you set your alarm and you think, oh, no, it goes off, I ain't gonna get up, I'm gonna get up. Yeah? But it's the power to get up. Yeah. The power to actually say, yeah, I'm gonna go on, I'm gonna carry on with these steps, I'm gonna move in this direction, not to pull the cover over your head and actually get up and go out there and do what you say that you wanted to do, the vision that you have, the steps that you know that you've got to take and get and do it. So financial is a part of, but not the only thing.
What was your favourite vehicle for making money?
At the time was selling clothes, approaching people and it was a psychological process. Right. So you see someone, you weigh them up, you look at them, you kind of look at what they've gotten already, you match what you've got in the boot to what they've got. Even if they come up with objections to the sale, you know how to break it down.
Right.
So, you know, you're free because, you know, you put your clothes in your boot at, say, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. By 7 o'clock, you got maybe 500, 700, couple £100, and you're moving around in all different areas. So you're meeting different people every day. Yeah. So that was really, I had the high passion for that. You know, I used to really enjoy that. But time moves on, family commitments come in, you mature. And so, you know, things change. So now I quite like sort of the property side of things because it's kind of more hands-off, kind of brings in its money, and values of property, assets grow or whatever, with little or no sort of nursing to a point. But now, moving people, developing people, allowing people to have the chance to think outside the box, to think past their nose, past their area, past whatever, is really what I've got a passion for now, and I want to do more of it. I could do 12-week workshops for young people, and I say one-to-ones. I really want to take more of a stage now, and you know, just motivate groups of people, because I found a problem, especially locally, that people don't invest in themselves. Yeah. One, because maybe there's a financial challenge, and two, because they don't even understand the importance. But if I ask them why they buy into Tesco, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, or Levi, Nike, or Adidas, they would have an answer. But to invest in themselves is a question mark. They just don't get it. They don't see why they should invest in themselves, but they're happy to invest in everything else.
To look at your life with a projection forecast, what can you see in the next 5 years?
I'd like to be in a position where I move more people. I have a strategy for how I'd like to do it, a mix of online workshops and personal appearances. And I think those two things, as they grow and develop, will bring me in a good sum and equally help a load of people. So that will be my 5-year projection. You know, the world's your oyster. So for me, I just want to build Sat Nav coaching, reach as many people as I can from all parts, because where we come from, where I've come from in the council estates or whatever, there's people all around the world that come from situations that they feel they can't move. Right. They can't immobilize themselves. They can't do things. You don't have to be black in East London. You don't have to be white in Northern Ireland. You don't have to be from Brazil. It's a mindset. It all comes down to the mindset. Yeah. And that's really what I want to get across. I want to use my story, to get other people to know that they, wherever you come from, whatever you do, you can make whatever you want happen. But you just got to use your vision, look outside of the box. You've
got these 2 books here, From Poverty to Novelty. 10 ways to achieve success for the startup or underdog. Mate, I'm impressed that you've got this down on paper first off, but can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Well, From Poverty to Novelty, it was just like a way of just trying to come up with a kind of catchy line. Poverty doesn't mean money. Right. Poverty means just like the lack of. Yeah, the lack of. So it could be the lack of, like I said earlier, like the opportunity, or even the lack of thinking in certain areas. Because if you only see the same thing every day, it's going to be very difficult for you can't be, set up a veterinarian business if you're on an estate and there's no animals or whatever. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good example. And then to novelty is just to be, to move from one space to another, right, where nothing's really a problem now. The things that used to bother you before, it's not a problem now. You can access anything, whether it be money, knowledge, information. Yeah, so there's just a journey, and I put it in 10 ways. I talked about the startup or the underdog, and again, that could be anybody. Yeah. But it's just moving from one space to another, okay. Because I'm big on that. I've made a transition in my life, so it's just putting it down. I put it down very concise. It's intended for people who don't tend to read. They don't want to read like these big books of 200 and 300 pages. So it's just a quick, concise situation, and then you put it down and you can, Then you can go on to bigger readings if you want, but it's like a startup for the startup.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And there's another book here, Making of the Brand, the definitive guide to developing your own clothing line. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, as I said, I think I did about 15 years. I've done about 15 years in a kind of fashion and branding kind of area, and Making of the Brand just came about through some courses that I run with young people, and the fact that a lot of people now want to start their own clothing brands. A lot of entrepreneurs are like, yeah, I want to make my own clothing line, blah, 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 blah. I found that a lot of people wanted it because of the American scene and what they, this rapper's got their own clothing, that rapper's got their own clothing line, but they didn't understand the processes. Right. So you get a lot of people who go and print a t-shirt, sell it to 2 of their friends, and then they got a clothing line. But actually there's more to it. Yeah. So again, small read. This one's got quite a lot of illustrations in it. There's a few typos, so I won't open up the book. What shall I? Yeah, quite well illustrated book there, and it just takes you through the steps. Okay. So again, it's for the young entrepreneur or the older entrepreneur who just wants to understand the steps of kind of getting into the fashion business. And this isn't, I'm going to say it, this isn't about catwalks and this, that, and the other. It's about raw, hard work, effort, put your brand out there, build your brand, and then from there, the world's your oyster. And if you read into the making of the brand, I'm very much about personal branding as well. Okay. And it's the same process, because you've got to be a brand to create a brand or to understand the brand.
If I was to try and look for these books, where would I go?
www.satnavcoaching.com, or you can @ me at Mr. Satnav with Twitter and @ me at Mr. Satnav Instagram. So any of those kind of mediums, you can kind of get in contact with us and find out about next set of workshops we're doing, or if you're interested in one-to-one coaching or whatever, that's where we are.
Mr. Sat Nav, thank you once again. Really do appreciate you stopping by, sir.
Yes, brother.
Really do appreciate it.
This is the Larry Show.
Just to let you know, that's right.